sworn in tomorrow. And for every one of them, from political first-timer to Westminster stalwart, it really will be the start of a brave new world. With exclusive access to the Edinburgh Chamber, we followed one MSP on a personal journey into history.
Really excited. I'm just absolutely delighted. I'm very proud that I've been elected. I'm feeling the responsibility. I hope that I can serve the people well, and I'm looking forward to the fresh challenges that are going to come from this brand new job. It certainly is a major change for both me and my family. I have been committed to all sorts of things in my life. I've never been one who has just gone home, put his feet up and watched the telly. It will have an impact on me personally, but it certainly have an impact on my family. I can't see myself commuting every day. I'm sure I'm going to have to find somewhere to live midweek in Edinburgh. I do respect the fact that this is to be a family-friendly parliament, but because you can't have people whose family homes are 120 miles away going back and forth every day. But if there are things on in the evening at home, then it is quite feasible for me to get there. I will have to give up my job as a biochemist, but for the last 11 years my employers have been very tolerant and my work colleagues have been very supportive, and because I have a highly specialised job, I certainly don't intend to leave them in the lurch by walking away from it. And as much as it's possible, given the responsibilities in the new Parliament, I will try to ease myself out over the next few months. The Parliament is going to have the Scottish school holidays, so I would be able to help out over the summer break at work. But after that, then it will be full-time at Edinburgh, and indeed if they can get an earlier replacement, if that's their wish, then that's how we'll deal with it.
It was a nail-biting election night for the SNP's Brian Adam. Privately, against all predictions, he knew he was close to toppling Labour's 10,000 majority in Aberdeen North. In the end, he fell short by just 400 votes, but is nevertheless heading to Holyrood off the North East Scotland list, a route he certainly doesn't see as second best.
I don't see that there's any great distinction between the two kinds of MSPs. In fact, there aren't going to be two kinds of MSPs. You're just going to be a member of the Scottish Parliament, a Scottish MP. There may be slightly different roles. Those kind of things we're going to have to work out between the parties, within the parties. But I'm delighted to be representing the North East of Scotland. I was born and brought up in Banffshire. I've lived in Aberdeen for most of my adult life. I lived and worked in Montrose for 3 years. I feel a very strong affiliation to the North East anyway, and I certainly will do the best I can to represent all of the people of the North East whose votes on the list got me elected.
Walking towards the new Parliament, Brian Adam brings with him a wealth of political experience from years of work within the trades union movement and as a councillor. His values are clear, though his style is light-hearted. That reflected in his hopes for a new, less confrontational era of Scottish politics.
We're in the new Parliament building. I believe this is likely to be where the opposition will be sitting, and since I'm an SNP member, we are the opposition on this occasion, and the opposition at that. There are 35 of us, and we'll be ranged around this side of the chamber. We're going to be a new Parliament. There's none of this lobby divisions and running through, literally through lobbies. We've got some magnificent new technology, which we're all going to get appropriate training in. We're going to have to put a nice card, the security card, in the box here, and request the opportunity to speak, and the presiding officer will be calling the members to speak, and we will be voting by pressing red for no, white for abstain, and green for yes. I hope that we can make the government in Scotland accountable. I think that the Westminster system allowed very limited accountability, and that certainly will be the role of any opposition MP anyway. But I think that we have the opportunity to create good legislation in Scotland to reflect the needs and wishes of the people of Scotland, to help create a better society, which I hope is what all the politicians here want, even if we differ about how we should achieve that.
We switch now to PR, which will play a large part in the new Edinburgh Parliament. Not proportional representation, but public relations. This week it's been revealed that there are more PRs working in Scotland than journalists. And this follows the announcement of major expansion plans by a leading Scottish company. So is public relations now the new growth industry, and how smooth will its development be?
Good morning, BT Media.
This media company sends out over 5,000 press releases each year from its offices all over Scotland, an activity which is becoming increasingly in demand for all companies, no matter how small. It's now just about to launch a dial-a-press release service where anyone can call in, give some information, and for a small fee have it spun by the PR people before mass distribution to the press and media. For some old hacks, journalists who prefer to dig up their own stories through contacts and local knowledge, this is unacceptable.
The people at the heads of these organisations, who often have the real story and the real facts that you want to get to, are protected by the public relations people. You sometimes don't get to speak to them at all. By the time you do get to speak to them, as I say, they've been carefully prepared for your approach, and you don't often feel that you're not getting to the heart of the story. So yes, the news is manipulated, and it's manipulated too to the detriment of the smaller firms, the smaller organisations who don't have such efficient news, public relations operations.
But for new students of journalism, this way of receiving information is an accepted part of life. These would-be reporters are being taught to spot the PR spin on a story and try to investigate beyond the information issued through formal channels. However, even for the experienced journalist, the PR men are often the gatekeepers to a story, with them standing between the reporters making the real issue public and the clients they represent.
Press officers, PR men, PR women, call them what you want. It's a whole new industry out there. So many organisations have now got their own press officer, PR officer, to inform us basically what's going on. That's fair enough if they are a channel for us, for our reporters, to get to the people they want to speak to. It is not all right if they are a barrier to our reporters rather than a channel.
However, the PR men are adamant they are providing a service, which not only helps the clients they represent, but also gives valuable leads to the media. Helping an organisation find its way into the press is only part of the job.
I think it's probably unfair on journalists, TV, radio or press, to say that PR organisations manipulate them. We employ former journalists, so we know the type of messages, we know the type of stories that they're going to be interested in. We don't send out puffs, which would, I suppose, could be argued would be manipulating the news agenda. We treat each story as we would if we were working for a newspaper or a TV station or a radio station.
But the PR tactics wear thin on some of the editors. Used to a stack of press releases flying at them through the post, the fax and email, it's the telephone follow-up calls, standard issue in the PR armoury, which can backfire.
One annoying aspect, I have to say, from my point of view, is when the telephone rings and some female, usually a female, introduces herself by her first name, calls me by my first name as though I've known her all my life, and she asked me, did I get her press release about some product or other, and were we giving it a good show in the Courier? Now, that is counterproductive.
So how do those training the journalists of the future prepare these students for the relentless assault of press releases? In front of them, in each day of their working lives, will be an ever-growing pile of unsolicited pages, each with its own uniquely crafted storyline designed to seduce the harassed reporters into accepting the news value of the well-spun story. So are they on guard?
The growth in the PR industry is a fashion at the moment. In Britain, I think if we look to the 80s, you will realise that advertising was the big communications fashion at the time. I think that the newspaper industry has changed a lot over the last 15 years. Today, journalists are expected not just to gather the news, but also to process the news. And I think perhaps there's a gap there that press officers have latched on to.
I don't see it as a threat to journalists, because journalists, as part of their job, have to handle all different types of areas of work, and public relations is one of them. They have to use it alongside other aspects of their job.
I don't think PR is like a separate job. It's so much just a kind of wee sideline, just to maybe fill up space in the paper or fill up time.
The lifestyle is very much marketing dominated these days. You know, you walk down the street and it's marketing everywhere. So it's not surprising really that there's more PR, because you know, everyone has like a kind of representation of their company or industry or business.
The more cynical of the journalists, however, are growing sceptical about the ability and indeed the willingness of some of the media to identify a PR person's vested interest. The massive growth of the PR market, the hired gun of journalism, may be in direct correlation to the journalist's opportunity to investigate a story. But perhaps the public get the press they deserve.
The public are not now prepared, I don't think, to take the in-depth analysis and the properly researched news story in the way that they did before. They want it all pre-packaged in the way that the PR men present it to us. So it's perhaps a vicious spiral that as we become lazier, the public become lazier and the PR men become fat.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Crossfire. Tomorrow, join North Tonight and Scotland Today at 5:30 for a special hour-long programme which reports on the historic day in Scotland's Parliament. But from me till next Tuesday, a very good night to you.
We'll still have a say